This is Money Made Simple, the financial podcast that keeps it simple and gets to the point.
Kia ora koutou and welcome to Money Made Simple, brought to you by Simplicity. I'm Jennie and this is John.
Hi.
Hi John. It's really nice to have you. You are the CEO of Consumer NZ. You've been the Assistant Privacy Commissioner.
Assistant Privacy Commissioner, yep.
Yes, and on lots and lots of boards, and basically you're just an advocate for Kiwi consumers.
Yeah, that's probably a nice summary of it.
Yes.
Nothing to add.
Okay, great. We're a financial podcast, so we're mostly talking to people about money. We've talked lots about the increasing and continued high cost of living. And despite the fact that the economy is improving a little, things are still pretty tough out there for consumers. So that's what we want to talk about. Yeah. Can we just talk a little bit first, though, about Consumer NZ itself?
So Consumer NZ, we're 65 years old. We kind of grew out of, the economic boom that occurred after World War II, where mass consumption really started.
And we began to think of ourselves as consumers, not just citizens. Was there a...
Yeah, well, when we had these terms foisted on us, I'm quite sensitive about this because I know it's in the name, but I'm not a big fan of the term consumer because it kind of makes us... Well, it's dehumanising. It kind of makes us these economic inputs into a system when actually we're oddly shaped humans with autonomy and free will, and we make irrational decisions and do things that we want to do. We're driven by desires and that sort of stuff.
Have you thought about changing the name? What would you change it to?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So our equivalent in the UK is called Which. The one in Australia is called Choice.
Choice.
That'll be awesome.
Really good with the Kiwi
it's already been taken. So I go over and see the team at Choice.
Can't we be Choice As or something?
Choice As. Yeah. That'll be. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's work on that. Anyway, so we've been around for a long time. We started off as a government department. We got deregulated like everything else in the 80s and 90s, and now are a member-based organisation. So we survive predominantly on people subscribing to us. We provide people useful information so they can make good purchasing decisions, but we also analyse the trends that are going on out there in the marketplace and go, this is not working well for consumers, and we advocate for change.
Yeah, which is fantastic because as a consumer or a citizen or a weirdly shaped person or whatever you just called me.
A weirdly shaped person in the economy.
In the economy, it's hard to advocate for yourself sometimes, but it's great that there's an organisation doing that on our behalf.
Yeah, cool.
So if you think about the pressures on New Zealand consumers at the moment, what are the kind of current issues that New Zealanders are facing?
Well, I think you have to start with the supermarkets.
Yep.
They are still a massive problem, and it's quite a big, complicated, thorny issue, but at the end of the day, we don't have enough competition in that market. So the two supermarket companies, it's commonly referred to as the duopoly, they are not necessarily competing particularly hard. The Commerce Commission has done a massive inquiry into the grocery sector and said competition is not working well for New Zealanders. What does that mean? It means because there aren't competitive pressures, they're not doing things like offering us really good deals on products. They're not innovating so that their service gets better. Actually, if you've had a look at any particular category in the supermarket recently, you'll notice actually the number of products you get to choose from, the brands, they're contracting. So we're getting less choice. All the opposites of those points that I've just described are what good competition gives you. We're really not seeing it. And the hardest thing for New Zealanders, particularly those on fixed incomes or at the lower end of the income scale, is the basic necessities of life are being priced beyond their reach.
Yeah.
And that should make us really uncomfortable as a society.
Because after housing, that's going to be the biggest household cost, is it?
Yes, and our surveying shows it is. Cost of living generally is the highest concern for people, but when you break down financial concerns, food and groceries is top. It actually beats housing out.
Well, because it's the day-to-day stuff, right? It's putting food in your kid's lunchbox and eating meals at the end of the day. And what you said about the competition, there's just no incentive here, right?
Well, that's right. We talk about there being a new entrant into the supermarket industry. Well, new entrants have a look at what's going on here. They look at two deeply entrenched incumbents who've brought up all the land that's good for supermarkets. And actually, people aren't necessarily complaining that there's not a supermarket close by. Yeah. So if you're a newcomer coming in and going, well, we're going to build supermarkets nationwide, well, where do you put them that there isn't already an incumbent that has the prime position in that in a suburb or an area? So there are lots of significant barriers to entry, and we're now at a point where we're 3 years on from a Commerce Commission inquiry that went,
Still
hey, everybody,
nothing.
alert, there are real problems here. And the government's still kind of making noises about doing something but not actually doing anything. We're really heartened by Nicola Willis taking on the supermarket portfolio, I guess you'd call it. We'd really like to see the Finance Minister take some firm action here to do more to encourage new entry.
Because it feels slow, right? If I'm just talking about the price of eggs or milk, and 3 years ago it was a problem and it's still a problem now, I don't really care about any of that background stuff and the politics of it. Like, is there anything that consumers can do to hurry this process along?
Well, it's a life admin thing,
I've
but
got too much life admin
well,
already.
we all do, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we default to doing the bulk of our weekly shop at the supermarket, and the supermarkets know that. But if you can do things like, for example, our work, we source eggs directly from the farmer.
Yeah.
And they come in and they drop off 10 boxes of eggs. And it's just a bulk deal that we've sorted out because somebody knew the farmer up in Otaki. We're based in Wellington. And so the farmer drives down, he does it for a few different workplaces. So there's things like that you can do that actually breaks the stranglehold.
Yeah.
Similarly, a friend of mine put me onto a place where you can order avocados directly and they get delivered to your house once a month. And
that's how I guess we used to shop, but no one has the time anymore, right? We're all so busy. So you just want to go one place, get everything.
That's right.
You know it's costing you a lot, but you do it anyway.
Yeah. And in some ways you go, well, the supermarkets should be rewarded for providing that convenience, right? And sure, make a margin, but what we know is happening here, these profits are excessive and they are exploiting their market power to make those excessive profits.
Are there other sectors or industries where the profit margin is so big? So I know that the cost of living increases in some part is because the cost of doing business has gone up. Like the cost of shipping went up hugely over COVID. So when you're buying something, you are buying a little bit of that increased cost.
When we talk about excessive profits, I think energy is probably the next sector that jumps out to me, right? And that is volatile from a pricing perspective. We get that. We run a highly renewable grid here in NZ, but when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine and the lakes are dry, we have to fall back on gas and, in the worst cases, coal that's burnt at Huntly.
Expensive and environmentally.
Yeah, it's the worst of both worlds, right? And what happens, the way our system works is when we're burning coal at Huntly, all of the electricity in the system is priced at the price of coal because the most expensive fuel sets the price, which is odd. And the people who built the market 30 years ago, obviously environmental pressures were different at the time, but they built in incentives and pricing structures to encourage certain behaviours. What we're saying now is actually the system's not working particularly well for the people of New Zealand. We're seeing large industrial entities fall over for financial reasons, and some of that can be contributed to the cost of power.
Wow.
What is the system doing to actually help the users of that system? And the other thing that galls me a little bit, that the profits being made by the gentailers, which are majority owned by the government, we did some calculations to work out they're making something like $7.5 million a day in profit. But we're not seeing the investment
back into
generation, right? So they can charge high prices because depending on how much rain there's been and how much wind is blowing, there is scarcity in the system. And that means prices go up. It's simple supply and demand. So generators are actually incentivized to keep supply constrained and charge more.
So again, it's like this quite complex systemic stuff in the background that the average consumer doesn't really understand, but it's affecting their bills.
Yes, and come 1 April, a whole lot of price increases are going to flow through,
Yay, just in time for winter.
Just in time for winter.
Brilliant.
10% minimum.
Okay.
And that is harsh.
Yeah. Okay, this is quite depressing. Thanks, John. What can we do? Like, what rights do consumers have? So when I was doing a little bit of research for this, I come across a couple of acts. There's the Fair Trading Act and there's the Consumer Guarantees Act.
Yeah. So there's probably 3 acts, those two that you mentioned, the Fair Trading Act, Consumer Guarantees Act, and the Commerce Act are 3 really important cornerstones of consumer protection. So the Fair Trading Act basically says businesses can't mislead you. They can't lie to you about what a product will do, where it was made, how much it costs, that sort of thing.
Which sort of seems like the bare minimum that they should be doing. It's telling us the truth.
Don't lie to people, is what the Fair Trading Act says. And the Consumer Guarantees Act says when you sell someone something or you provide them a service, make sure it does what you said it was going to do. And if it's not of acceptable quality, then there's remedies for people to get a refund or get a replacement or whatever they need. Then the Commerce Act kind of sits over the top of those two and says, here's how we're going to regulate competition in our markets and ensure that where businesses are in an industry, they're actually competing against each other because, as we talked about before, competition produces competition on price. So in theory, lower prices, better choice, more innovation, better service, all of those really good things. So those are the cornerstones. So in terms of your question, what can consumers do about getting a fair price? The best thing to do is switch away, if you can, from the provider that's not giving you a fair price. So with electricity, for example, Consumer NZ, we run Power Switch, which is a price comparison website. Once you know what other deals are out there, you can go back to your power company and go, hey, hold on, everyone else is cheaper. What are you doing to keep my business? And more often than not, they'll go, well, we'll sharpen our pencil and give you a better deal.
I'm not really good at that. Like when I've travelled and things,
I
haggling,
think Kiwis
I'm
are terrible at it.
I'll just pay the most. Whatever you say, I'll pay
It's culturally odd for us
Yeah.
to do that. You accept the price that's on the thing. You either buy it or you don't.
Exactly. But you're saying that you can actually go, if you're armed with the right information.
Correct, yeah.
Because it's interesting, it always seems like businesses are looking for new business and are not very good at looking after their existing customers. There's that like loyalty penalty almost.
That is a brilliant point,
Yeah.
And we see that over and over in the power industry where people go, oh, I've been with X Jen Taylor for 20 years and they're great. And we go, yeah, but they're charging you $2,000 a year more than your neighbour. It all comes out of the same bucket. Electrons are not different, right? So, and the electricity industry through their marketing will argue, buy your power from us because it's amazing. It's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Some power companies have been pinged by the Advertising Standards Authority for talking up how they're providing renewable energy. They're not. All the energy goes into one bucket, and you can't pick X company's electron out of the
And again,
mix.
like you said, it depends in New Zealand on the weather.
Precisely.
As to what you're getting.
Yeah, if it's a dry year, you're getting more fossil fuels in your energy mix than you would in a normal weather year.
Okay. Well, that's
Still depressing, sorry.
yeah, no, but it's getting better because you're giving me a little bit more power. So what are some other things, you can't haggle with the price of milk at the supermarket, but are there some strategies that we can use to try and avoid those higher prices?
So the one I mentioned before, if you can diversify where you buy from, that's good.
So make friends with an egg farmer.
Make friends with an egg farmer.
Chicken farmer.
Your local veggie markets, if you're lucky enough to have a butcher in your neighbourhood. So yeah, looking around, sometimes shopping online can be a really quicker way of making comparisons because you can compare between supermarkets. The other thing to watch with the supermarkets is loyalty schemes and discounting. The Commerce Commission is currently laying charges against or prosecuting multiple supermarkets for misleading pricing. So the price on the shelf being different to the price you charge at the till. So you've got to keep an eye on the products as they're going through and being able to go back and have a look at your receipt afterwards and go, geez, those bananas seemed way more expensive than I was expecting them to be. I might check the price on that. And I look, again, it's life admin and the supermarkets know it's life admin. The Commerce Commission's doing its best to crack down on this, but the problem's so widespread, mainly because the supermarkets just haven't invested in their systems, right?
I was going to say, is it intentional or is it just a problem that they're not rushing to fix?
I feel like it's negligent rather than intentional. They're not rushing to fix it, in my observation. But in 2025, it is bananas, and I did that on purpose, that you have large, highly profitable entities that can't get the basics of being a grocer right, which is the price on the shelf is the price you charged at the till. It doesn't get more basic than that, does it? And then the last thing is discounting. So often there's things like 2-for-1 specials, that sort of stuff.
I'm a sucker.
Have a look though, because often it's cheaper to buy two individual packs of ginger nuts rather than the twin pack. The twin pack will be more expensive, even though it's wrapped up as a deal. And that's part of the prosecution that the Commerce Commission's taking now.
Because I guess they're kind of relying on people being in a hurry and assuming things, right? So is it a good thing to go back and say, I paid too much for these bananas? Because presumably the more people do that, the more noise that they're making, will that bring change about?
Well, so the prosecutions that the Commerce Commission's taking now were as a result of us advocating. So we put a call out to consumer members and supporters, and we had over 600 examples come in a good enough form that we could then package them up and send them to the Commerce Commission. They've done their own investigation and said, yes, this is a problem. They're also looking at instituting like a mandatory complaints recording regime for supermarkets. So when you do make your complaint, supermarkets by law have to record that and then publish how many complaints they're getting.
So that doesn't happen at the moment?
It does not happen at the moment.
Right.
And I think that is quite a big deterrent for people. Firstly, when you realise you've been overcharged, what are you going to do? You're going to get back in the car, probably spend as much on petrol at the 50 cents you spend extra on your baked beans. The supermarkets know this. They know they've got a strong position in the market.
So that's something that we could all contribute a little bit to.
Yeah, and I should note that Woolworths offer you the refund plus the goods for free. So there's more of an incentive there, whereas foodstuffs aren't being that
They might just
benevolent.
give you the 50 cents back and you're like,
they're
oh,
barely,
yay.
They're barely admitting that there's an issue.
Right. What about, and you did a podcast about this yourself, the right to repair.
Yep.
So I've got a really good example of this personally. My son got a new tablet and we decided to buy the slightly better one for him because we want it to last for the whole of high school. And he and I broke it within about 10 days.
What happened, Jennie?
We were playing music and we propped it up on keyboard and it just slipped behind and the screen shattered. We went to take it to get fixed and they were like, we can't. So it's a $600 tablet, brand new. It's just a cracked screen. So we had to go out and buy him a cheaper laptop for school now, and we've got this brand new piece of equipment that they can't replace the screen on. And it just seems crazy to me.
I'll say it again, it's bananas.
It's bananas.
So there's a bill that's passed its first reading called the Consumer Guarantees Act Right to Repair Bill. And that would effectively solve your problem for you. It would say if you are a manufacturer or retailer selling goods into the New Zealand market, you need to ensure that there are spare parts available for that or disclose that there aren't.
When someone purchases it.
Yeah. So you could go, all right, we're going to buy the cheaper version knowing that there are no spare parts available. You still have rights if it breaks, not in your instance because obviously you klutzed it up. But if, for example, it had a defect or something, you'd have rights to get that repaired or replaced if they could repair it, because a lot of products just don't have the spare parts anymore. Put an environmental lens over that, and that's a terrible outcome for the planet, right? We're just seeing this endless stream of e-waste.
Buy a new one, buy a new one.
Buy a new one, right? Yeah, keep on the consumption treadmill. Actually, we should be repairing these products. You know, they're full of parts that are made out of rare earth materials. That
we spend all this money digging all these things out of the ground and then we just throw them back in the ground again.
Yes.
It's crazy.
So we're big fans of the Right to Repair Bill.
Yeah.
Conceptually and philosophically, it makes good sense to us. The other cool thing is that it encourages manufacturers to make more durable products. This makes a whole lot more sense for our economy.
Yeah. So if I'm a consumer, I've bought something and I feel like it's been unfair, or I've been misled and I've not got what I thought I was going to get, or the service has been terrible. Are there resources available?
Yeah. So we have a whole lot of free advice available to the general public. If you're a Consumer NZ member, we actually have advisors who will deal with your specific circumstances, and in some instances, but they'll call up the retailer on your behalf and go, what are you doing? You know, you've got obligations under, I don't know, the Fair Trading Act or the Consumer Guarantees Act. And it's actually really helpful for us to get that information in from people. So New Zealanders can be, I think, this is a generalisation, but I think they can be quite reluctant to complain sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, the complaints are the friction that helps us get momentum to go forward, right? So when we learn that you've been ripped off or a retailer has provided you terrible service or misled you about your rights, whatever the case may be, you might not be alone. That might have been the fifth call we got that week on that one. And we can start packaging that together, and it means that when we turn around and, I don't know, name the company in the media or ring the company up, I might talk to their CEO going, hey, we're getting a flood of complaints in about this aspect of your service. You should do something about it. Most CEOs genuinely, when they get it, they'll go, oh, okay, this is pretty serious. And then if nothing happens with a weight of complaints, we can then go to somewhere like the Commerce Commission, and, you know, that company could end up getting prosecuted at the kind of pointiest end of the enforcement continuum. And look, we're not necessarily out to get business. Business needs to know something's going on, but if business knows and doesn't do something about it, that's when we
would step in.
Get shirty. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's good to know that there is a group of people out there. I'm a total people pleaser. I don't complain if my meal arrives cold and it's not even what I ordered. I would still eat it. I'm that kind of person.
Yeah.
But I might ring you or your team and say,
And I'll come down to the restaurant.
Thank you. Actually, I've got a list. Can you go around?
Right.
I would call someone who might be able to advocate for me.
And sometimes it's actually easier for the business when that happens, because let's say you were someone who got quite worked up if their meal turns up cold or it's not what you ordered. And, sometimes we can be guilty as consumers of not acting reasonably. That's unhelpful as well. So us coming in as a third party that knows the rules and can also say to a consumer, actually, you're not getting $1 million in compensation for this, but you might get a free meal.
Yeah. So you set expectations and you can have a reasonable,
and
unemotional...
turn the temperature down a wee bit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in, John, to chat with me. You're on your way to Sydney.
Yes, I'm off to deliver the Ruby Hutchison Memorial Lecture for the ACCC. I'm quite excited about that.
That
It
sounds
should be
very
cool.
fancy. Could you have a chat about the name, Choice As?
Yeah,
While you're there,
I'll
just-
float it. We'll see.
yeah.
We'll see. I was thinking of also cracking a joke about renaming the Tasman Sea the Aotearoa Ocean. Just,
they're gonna
just
love
as a
that.
Trump reference. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. We'll have you back in to talk about some of these things that we've only touched very lightly on next time
cool.
you're in Auckland.
All right.
Thanks for coming in.
Nice. No worries.
This podcast contains personal opinions and is intended to provide educational information only. It doesn't relate to your particular financial situation or goals and is not financial advice or recommendations. Simplicity New Zealand Limited is the issuer of the Simplicity KiwiSaver scheme and investment funds. For product disclosure statements, please visit Simplicity's website simplicity.kiwi.